Welcome, everyone. Let me ask you two, three questions. Who in the audience is building products enabled by artificial intelligence today? Any kind of, put your hands up. Okay. Who is in the audience using technologies where he thinks that's enabled by AI in customer service or so? Okay, yeah, good audience, good audience. Who has, put your hands up, who has made good experiences with these types of tools and technologies so far? That's not too bad, actually, right? Cool. So yeah, glad that I'm here. I have an exciting panel. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining. You all, work with companies that are, driven, in this AI hype, and you're making use of this or enabled by AI technologies. Maybe you can give us a brief introduction about what you're doing and how it basically relates to, or how important that AI or the technology is for you in your business. Maybe Lawrence.
Okay. Yeah. Hi everyone. I think I can talk a lot about AI and what we do, but I really try to focus on the AI part. So super quick, we are one of the largest photography communities in the world. We do image licensing, all kinds of process behind it, and actually the company is driven by a massive obsession. So when we started out, we realized that essentially since digital cameras are invented, people take photos like crazy, like rather 10 photos instead of one. In contrast to analog, where people actually, started to think before they take a photo. And this leads to a massive wave of images that's flooding the internet and also piling up on our phones. We never look at that stuff anymore. And we build technology that actually utilizes machine learning to understand aesthetics and imagery, right? So what is a good photo? What is a bad photo? And we utilize this in our entire business processes of licensing images, but also really on a private level on the phone. So the latest tech that we developed is actually running on the CPU of the phone. It can scan everything completely private on your phone and then actually surface the images that are most relevant, most beautiful for you to use, right? So we use this to enable photographers to upload better content faster, but also, for example, in the context of sharing, you can find images that are just simply the best and you take the hassle out of the selection process.
Cool. Peter, what about you?
Sorry. So we are quite a diverse company with activities in many different areas. The same applies to the technology sector. And as your short survey purely shows that it's a lot already out there in the practice. And it starts with real-time bidding platform for advertisement, right? I mean, this is a purely optimization issue where we apply technologies which are currently often named as AI for a very long time. A little bit more interesting for me is whenever it comes to the border to the language, because there used to be a time where we said language is thinking, right? Because no one of us is able to abstract in his own brain, for we are humans without the language. And journalism is in the heart of producing digital language all the day. So measuring which headline, we ask our journalists to produce 3 different headlines, and then measuring, opting out which is the best one is have been the start. Understanding the connections between different stories, different articles across the whole newspaper universe or the publishing universe, not only in our things, is the second example I'd like to give. And the third one is when we try to generate texts out of data, so-called robot journalism, is something we have surely a close look at.
Cool. Alex, what about Raza? How important is AI for
yeah,
bot
obviously super important if you ask me. I mean, obviously there's a lot of talk about AI. We try to build it and sort of work on the underlying technology, and the company actually came out of the frustration back in the days, like 2 years ago. My co-founder and I were building like a bot ourselves, so on Slack. And we pretty much stumbled upon like 2 major problems for us back in the days. And the first one was that we didn't want to ship all of our labeled training data to the big SaaS APIs to do natural language understanding. So like Wit.ai, API.ai, IBM Watson, and all of these guys. So we pretty much needed to build that capability ourselves, that we understand language in text. And the second frustration was more like on our user end, because actually people started using the bot and then didn't ask like all these questions that I as a developer sort of envision, which is like, show me a 5-star restaurant in Berlin Mitte with like pet friendly and Wi-Fi and stuff like that. Nobody asked that. People say I'm hungry. and then you need to really lead a conversation, so a real dialogue, and that's like what makes conversations human. And the second part is something we also started developing back in the days, and then we found that it's not a problem that we only have with our bot company back in the days, but pretty much the whole market, and that's why we decided to start as an infrastructure company with open source at its core. And it turns out that it's something a lot of people need. We have like thousands of people using it worldwide. Large companies like Bank of America, UBS, building on top of our technology. And pretty much the way how we make money as a company is like a combination of like enterprise packaging and data packages that we sell to them. And
cool.
It's pretty much used in like a lot of different use cases. The two major ones we see right now is the elephant in the room, like customer service automation. So you chat with your bank online, and then parts of that is automated in a conversation. But the more exciting use case is actually also selling stuff in a conversation. And we've seen like the first cases from our customers that got like extremely good conversion rates trying to sell like insurance policies via SMS, for example. If you guys are interested in that, we can talk about that offline. I'm not allowed to talk about it too much in public, but really exciting. And I think that's also where the talk about AI really turns into real results and solves business problems.
Yeah. Tina, what about you? Where does AI fit
Right,
in?
yeah, so the first problem is already solved, customer care automation. Yeah, so basically what we do is, with Palamind, is that we want to build like, you can imagine something like an additional mind, similar to a human mind, but it's artificial, and you can use it as an additional team member in your customer care team. So basically, the whole product is artificial intelligence. Yeah. So we want to build this additional comparable intelligence, which is comparable to a human in specific parts of the customer care communication. So what we can do until now is that we understand incoming requests from end customers. We know what they want. We know what the semantics of the natural language is. We can then decide what is the best action to execute, and we can answer incoming requests automatically. So that means we can automate communication, parts of the customer service communication, and up to now already in parts. So it's completely AI, the whole product.
So how does product development change based on the technologies that are out there these days, and how do products change then at the end of the day? Through natural language processing, for example, or through image recognition, using cameras, kind of stuff. Any thoughts? Any ideas?
Yeah. Do you want me to start out? Or?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, the thing is, it kind of depends on how you see it. And I think AI in itself, we really have to understand what it can do in products. And that's, in my opinion, at least at the current state, mainly making things a lot simpler, right? So we started out building this photography network, and we learned that, people have problems taking so many images, to structure them, deciding how to treat them, what to upload, and so on, right? And we just understood that this process of curating your own images, it's this task, you need to block like 2 weekends a month to actually completely, look at everything and handle it and sort it out. And the technology, when it comes into our designs, into our products, is actually something very subtle. We try to make it, we're not explicit about, hey, right now, AI is changing your life, right? But it's really little stuff that makes things really convenient. So there are two examples. One is actually this photo picker that we just recently had. Essentially, on top of your camera, you just get a selection of images that you can choose and then share. So that's convenient. It saves time, right? And in the end, the decision, what you upload, is still made by the human, but it's just so much more faster because we can reduce the noise around it actually by amplifying the curation process. And another thing that we do that's also very interesting, I think, is that we try to mess a bit with the way popularity works also, right? So if you look at platforms like Instagram, it's a lot about, users being very prominent, who have a lot of followers, get a lot of likes, and so on. And that's, in the context of photography again, very sad, because there are so many fantastic photographers out there. There's this amazing documentary, Finding Vivian Maier, about a legendary street photographer that just got discovered after she died, which is sad, right? So we utilize this technology also within our apps to, showcase people who do not get exposure usually, but they're actually excellent in what they do. And I think that's really a point where slowly but surely the technologies start to amplify the product experience, and this is really outstanding.
How is this in the content, in this content industry, in the digital media industry?
Well, the
helping
difference might be
users?
that publishing and content industry is out there for quite a while, right? A couple of 100 years. So we all are dwarfs standing on the shoulder of giants, and this is kind of a development I've seen, from database decisions. In the beginning, layout for a website was done like for the newspaper. You hire an artist and an art director, and he decides about fonts, about design, everything. Nowadays, you measure, right? You make A/B testing, you try out which function does work and which is not. And then you're thinking about the innovation in the content in this area, which starts actually mainly with how to collect information, how to verify information. So something before the publish, right? The research work, and then. From there, you try out what's actually attracting the customer. I would say in the reality of our current existing products, AI is just an optimization tool. And I like this distinguishing in the morning between reptile brain, mammal brain, and human brain, right? The difference is the human is talking while any reptile can see. Yeah? We see a lot of need to get informed decisions when we're talking about real intelligence on our assistants. You need a lot of background information, which we are used to dive into and try to make visible for the masses.
Okay. How in the bot world, what's your vision of improving, the user experience basically, or when somebody goes to a website, in customer service, as you mentioned, how, there's a lot of hype out there. How do you distinguish that? How do you make it really workable and a great customer experience?
I think, in the end, I would totally add to what you said earlier with AI should make lives much simpler, but it also should really take out friction. And if I look at the website of any bank or insurance or utility company or pretty much every large corporation that is in a commoditized industry, it's really a pain in the ass. It's really, really bad, and I think it shouldn't take longer than 1 second to change my address if I moved into a new house and to tell my bank and my insurance and everyone. So I think that's where all this frustration comes from. What the business problem is in the end is that it's extremely cost intensive to make sure that there's somebody sitting in your call centers to pick up the angry customer calls and make sure that they can change their address finally, right? Because the reality is that, just take this insurance example, a lot of large insurances invest in millions of dollars into portals where people can log in and do self-service customer service, but there was always a dream and it never really worked. If you look into the reality, 99% of the people forget their password. They're going to call Ergo or any other insurance and let them know that they changed their address, so the cost is really high. So I think what the big sort of opportunity is, and I'm not saying that this will happen tomorrow, I think that's in the next 5 to 10 years, is that you will really have this one-on-one conversation with pretty much any company you deal with as a customer with the same service level as if they would have somebody in your customer center, but that's just not working from a cost perspective from them, so that's why you need to have some sort of automation. And then in the end, these people that sit in call centers right now, don't think that they will be fired. I think they will do more value-adding things. So let's take this example from you move into a new house and then you want to let your insurance know. Pretty much what that means is that something changed in your life. So there's a great opportunity to upsell another insurance. You might have gotten a child. You want to do something about that. So whatever. So there's a lot of stuff which is currently not taken care of. And I think that's the big opportunity, really taking out friction out of people's lives.
Yeah, one important aspect, I guess, regarding this is that you have to keep in mind what business case you're actually trying to do in a conversational way. Because it often, I guess it's also part of the frustration is that we have to deal with chatbots trying to solve a problem which could be easily done in just filling out 3 fields in some web form, yeah. So this is also it's a different thinking, yeah. So what does a conversation really mean, and what's the big benefit of a conversation? So what can we enable doing that in a conversational interface and not in a form, and what should we better leave in a form, yeah, because it's easier and more comfortable for the user to use.
How would you say, Lawrence? How important is personalization in the sense of, or when you talk about user and experience, and what are its limits or its challenges these days?
I think personalization, that's like really the massive challenge, right? Because in the end, every time, so taking the example of bots, right? When you speak with someone, you get natural responses. There's so much more information actually being exchanged. They're looking at your face, your expressions, what's your mood, and so on, right? And I think human interaction in itself is always highly personalized because of that, right? And at this point where we get really close to simulating this, it's extremely interesting, right? And we try to do this a lot in the technology. So if you speak about beauty, every single person in this room probably has their own definition of what is beautiful and what's not beautiful, right? We can actually, in the community, so we have more than 20 million photographers around the world, and we see what images they like. And we can see, okay, beautiful in China is not the same as beautiful in the States. And what's beautiful today, in a year, it's completely different stuff again, right? So we configure the technology to actually be able to develop flexibility and learn very fast, right? So what we can do today is, based on as little as 30 image likes, we can start to personalize and understand the taste and actually train a dedicated model that will then surface more content or just change the ranking in a search engine to actually match your taste. And to me, this is the most fascinating topic of it all, because I think that's actually what makes things really intelligent in the end. I also think that we're just at the beginning of true personalization.
Yeah. What are the limits, Peter, in your area around personalization, or what are the challenges that you are facing?
Well, again, I'm dealing with products which are a little bit more general, not such a very specific thing, and personalization of content is something Facebook is doing heavily, and Google also, and also we do it with the search engines we support. Recently we launched a news product which is half-half. Yeah? So we can always compare with the state before, right? Before we do personalization, we have an experience of how much revenue we can generate, how much people are clicking what. And in our experience, we can leverage 5 to 7% by personalization. Yeah? And I consider this to be a little bit a cultural problem. Yeah, because people are used to read in the newspaper one story for us all, and the heavier you go in personalization, selecting things regarding to the behavior before, it does not work extremely well, right? I mean, 5 to 7% still something, but not revolutionary. So we are trying a lot of different strategies there, like serendipity. Yeah, mix something in which people are not expecting, but other people of the same category liked. Yeah. Also, we found out that people never are true about their real interests. Yeah. So if you ask them in a onboarding process, please select the culture, politics, sports, right? The yellow press stuff never shows up. Yeah? But in reality, later on, you find specifically which contents they prefer. So it's a huge challenge, but I think for at least for the more general approach of informing people about the world, we do not have enough information and data yet, neither about the profiles and interests of the people, nor about the existing informations which are out there and we can provide.
What about in the NLP side, in the bot side? You're touching very sensitive information at some point, whether from a company but also from a customer. What are the limits there? What are challenges? Is it also the privacy, data privacy? How do you handle that?
So from the technological side, I wouldn't say there's a limit, because you can detect such things quite good and you can anonymize data. But this is a little bit more about feeling, right? So how do your customer feel by giving these data? And if it's sensible data, personal data, so of course there may be some felt limit where the customer doesn't want to go further. So we have encountered that several times regarding sensible health data. So where our customer said, well, this is not an issue. I want to be done by a computer, by a machine. This needs to be done by humans. So every time that you detect such an incoming request, please transfer it to a human agent so that they can keep track of it.
I think it's probably like sort of twofold. On the one hand, you have like the obvious things, like in a bank setting again, where, for example, in Switzerland, you just need to make sure as a bank that this doesn't leave Switzerland. So you want to really deploy it on premise. You want to have it ideally open source or something like that. That's also why we see a lot of traction from these industries. On the other hand, I think what is also important from a company perspective is that it's strategically an important asset to have this like control over labeled training data sets. And that's something that also gets lost if you use like SaaS APIs. But in terms of like usage and sort of like, how people think about it, how like the end user thinks about it, I actually don't even think that there are flip side arguments as well. Like if you think about like mental health, this might be something where you want to talk to a bot and not a human being because you're afraid that just want to check for yourself and see sort of what the bot diagnoses. And this is something I think where bots can even help. So it's like not always like this sort of downside of privacy.
May I add one more about bots writing journalistic articles, right? Which is actually working quite well in areas where you can cover the whole knowledge in a specific topic, like weather, right? This is there are limited things can happen with the weather. Maybe we find out more in the future, but or let's take the soccer example. Where it's easy and the high quality possible to make an article regarding a play between two football teams. So with personalization, you are able to generate the same text in favorite for the one team or for the other team, right? The fan of the one and the other. Then you are able to change the language between very easy, simple language, like for kids and young adults, let's say, or specific types of readers. And you can make it for the pro and for the educated person. And then you can make it in Turkish, right? And then you can make it in German or in English. And then you can make it for the Turkish guy who is in a younger age and fan of Borussia Dortmund. Yeah? And this is an example where I go to my journalist colleagues and say, hey, how would you react if I ask you to provide me like 84 times the same text, customized to the needs of the person who wants to read it? Yeah? And this is a truly option for scaling. We are actually not there because the automated translation is the part which is hurting most. But with such a thing, German football is quite popular all over the world, and you could easily imagine to reach more customers. So.
Is there anything when everything is automated, right, and when we think about AI, the differentiator is for sure around the quality and the performance of the service. But is there anything else in terms of the user experience that where you can differentiate specifically with the use of any kind of AI technology?
Yeah, so no, to be honest, I think, in our case, I'm talking a lot about like the photography concept or context because that's what I'm focused on, but I think it's exactly that, right? And to understand, also where the technology can be reliable and then actually blend into existing products, right? So that's always leading to an advantage. So just by really, along the workflow of a photographer, accelerating that at specific points, just save time. These are tremendous advantages, right? And I think, especially when it comes to designing products, what you said before, I think is perfectly right. It's in the end, it's about reducing friction, right? The product in itself is not necessarily, using the interface, but it is the goal that you want to achieve, which is, to be creative as a photographer. And if you can actually remove the friction of this process, there is more time for creativity, right? And that's also what, to me personally, is most fascinating about AI is that I don't understand it as something that replaces human creativity and intelligence, but it is actually an amplifier, right? It can take away time that is usually needed for very repetitive, not so complex things, and then leave time for things like actual creativity. And I think that's amazing.
Anything to add?
Yeah, that's definitely the core of it. Yes, I definitely agree with that. Even in a customer care space, it's the same thing. Yeah, you don't want to do all the work with the artificial intelligence. It's about automating the part where artificial intelligence is maybe even better because it's faster, it's more accurate. Yeah, but it's not about laying off all the customer care agents, yeah, because they can even focus on the more complex stuff, on the more on the incoming issues where more empathy is needed, where people just want to complain about what goes wrong and such things, where humans are really good in. Yeah.
Do we have a question from the audience, actually? Anyone in the back? How do we go about it? Just in the back over there. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the talk. It's very inspiring. And I have a question in terms of the interaction between AI and customers. Do you have experience or have you thought about teaching the AI to be humorous? And if yes, can you share with us some experience? And if not, do you think it's important or doable? Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, we tried. And I also have some experience from my time in research where we tackled such problems. It was mostly focusing on being more sociable, being more understanding about what people may have in a communication except the just exchanging idea. So what else are they exchanging? Is it some kind of social communication, a layer of status going on? So there are many different layers in communication that you have to keep track on. If you want to build an interface that is really like a human communication, doing communication like a human, and we tried humor, and I can say it's incredibly hard. So sometimes there are some minor things that you can do which pay off directly in some kind of referring to the situation you're just talking about, having reference to some situation in a city where you know the customer comes from or whatever. But in general, it's really a hard thing for machines to do.
So then, thanks everyone for being here, and I hope it was useful, and enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.